fighting this disease. So that was a big motivator to participate, help science, and help those people back home.
Once again, the research has paid off. The vaccine that came out of Walter Reed is now in the final stages of a human trial involving 16,000 children throughout sub-Saharan Africa. It's the first malaria vaccine ever to reach this advanced stage. So far it's looking good. It may be 40 to 50% effective in preventing malaria, and that's good enough to save millions of lives. Richard Knox, NPR News.
You're listening to All Things Considered from NPR News.
It has been a bleak summer for the National Hockey League. Yesterday, a recently retired player named Wade Belak was found dead in a hotel room in Toronto. And he was the third NHL player to die in less than 4 months. One of those deaths was caused by an overdose, the other believed to be a suicide, and reports suggest yesterday's death was also a suicide. James Myrtle writes about hockey for the Globe and Mail in Toronto, and he joins us now. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
There's one thing that links all three of these men. One other thing, they were all enforcers who were better known for throwing punches than for skating fast or for scoring goals. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, it's pretty remarkable because it's a small group of players in the league.
Can you tell us about Wade Belak and Wade Belak?
Well, they were different people, off the ice. Wade Belak was known as being very gregarious and outgoing, and he had a career in broadcasting lined up. Derek Boogaard and Rick Rippon, the other two players that died, were in their mid-20s and still had a lot of their career left to play, and were seen more as maybe more one-dimensional than Wade Belak.
The coincidence of what all three men did, that they played the same role in hockey, of course, it's impossible to ignore. But the other thing that's happening in the world, do you know if all three were having hard economic times, or were they all involved in substance abuse to some extent? Do you know anything like that?
Now, we don't know very much about Wade Belak because his death was yesterday afternoon, but Derek Boogaard, the first player that died, he had substance abuse issues, and they're saying it was an accidental death, drug overdose essentially, and Rick Rippon had suffered from depression for almost a decade before he committed suicide.
I suppose the National Hockey League could say what a strange set of coincidences has occurred during this offseason. Are they, or are they going to look into what happened and investigate?
There's been really limited public comment so far from the league, but I'd be very surprised if they try and sort of brush this under the carpet. I think what they're going to do is they're going to decide that there's going to need to be some changes made, and I don't know how they could come to any other conclusion given how many deaths there have been in 4 months' time.
I gather that people who follow hockey closely, and people like you who write about hockey, have been unable to ignore the fact that these three players played the same role, and that possibly the role has something to do with depression. Don't you think?
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment, or that the role is just a very, very difficult job to take on, and that it affects people in different ways, but this is one of the ways that it affects some of them, and that it's sort of a burden, I think, that a lot of the players carry around, especially when they have that role, and there's always a danger of injury or of having a really short career. The pay is generally low for these guys. These are players that only play 2 or 3 or 4 minutes of a 60-minute hockey game, so they're anomalies on their team. They spend a lot of time on the bench. It's a very odd position in professional sports. It's very unique, and it's very difficult on the athletes.
The hockey season starts in about a month, and players will soon return for camp. You assume this will be a major topic of conversation?
Absolutely, yeah. Training camp is going to get underway on September 16th, and I think this is going to be a major topic in hockey for at least the first 2 months of the season.
Well, James Myrtle, thank you very much for talking to us today.
Thank you.
James Myrtle covers hockey for the Canadian newspaper, the Globe and Mail. He spoke to us from Toronto.
Continues right after this. You're listening to All Things Considered on KCUR FM and KCUR HD.
spending the Labor Day weekend at a festival isn't your cup of tea, then tune in for some great ideas from our posse of three film critics, that is. Reviews the latest art, independent, foreign, and documentary films showing on area screens. Next time on Up to Date.
Join us for Up to Date tomorrow morning at 11 with podcasts at kcur.org. Tonight on the Kansas City Symphony Hour, Dumbarton Oaks Concerto by Stravinsky and Symphony No. 5 by Beethoven, conducted by Michael Stern. Join us for the Kansas City Symphony Hour tonight at 9. Support for All Things Considered comes from Kansas City Actors Theater, presenting the Pinter Project, featuring works by British playwright Harold Pinter, including The Birthday Party and an evening of one-act plays, The Collection, The Lover, and Night. Details are online at kcactors.org. And from Half Price Books, celebrating Labor Day today through Monday at all locations. Details on new and used books, music, movies, and more are online at halfpricebooks.com. The time is 10 to 5, 101 degrees in Midtown.
From NPR News, this is All Things Considered. I'm Robert Siegel.
And I'm Melissa Block. Los Angeles is cracking down on the illegal sale of animals. Thousands are sold on the streets of downtown LA every year. A new ordinance has raised fines on buyers, but as Gloria Hillard reports, shutting down the city's underground animal economy won't be easy.
Behind the wheel of the undercover car, LAPD Commander Andrew Smith admits the nickname Dr. Doolittle isn't the toughest moniker a cop could have.
But I guess it fit okay, and I didn't really mind.
Over the years, Smith became well known for having a soft spot for the tossed-away animals found on these downtown streets. Today, he's taking me into the heart of the city's legal animal sales, LA's fashion district, where amid an open-air bazaar of counterfeit goods, fake Gucci, Prada, and Levi's, you'll find
Critters of any type that you can imagine. Lizards, snakes, rats, cats, dogs, fish, turtles, hamsters, gerbils, birds of all types that I've never even seen before.
Turning down another street, the sidewalks are overrun with bargain shoppers and merchandise that spills onto the street. It is here, among racks of sunglasses, sportswear, and purses, that the animal vendors hawk their goods.
Unfortunately, almost all the animals that are sold out here die in no time because of improper treatment, or because they're sick or injured when they're sold, or because they're too young to be away from their mother and they die of starvation.
We pull into a parking garage where an elevator delivers us to the busy street. And we're a few feet away in the hot sun. A man is standing behind a stack of plastic cages holding turtles and baby rabbits. Commander Smith, undercover in a baseball cap and sunglasses, approaches the man.
How much for the rabbits? 20 for the rabbits? What do you feed them?
The vendor hesitates, gives my shoulder bag a second glance, and spots my microphone. He quickly backs away and signals two other men who swoop in, grab the cages, and disappear into the crowd.
And what they'll do is they'll stash the rabbits somewhere in the back, behind the store, behind the counter, in the trunk of a car.
Smith says the sellers work in teams with lookouts here in Santee Alley.
How much for a turtle? $5. How many you got?
We walk a few feet away, and in return, the turtle seller is on. Many of the store owners work with the animal vendors.
Right next to a pair of Levi's, they'll have 6 little big birds that they're selling.
Vendors who sell these animals face just a $25 fine. LA's new ordinance targets the buyer. $250 for a first citation, double that for a second offense.
I think we need to make a lot of changes. We need to do a lot of educating, but I think they're a little piece of the puzzle. I think everything we do gets us one step closer to where these animals aren't being mistreated and aren't dying here on the streets.
With the animal vendors making a hasty departure from Santee Alley, we call it a day.
I'm betting that our rabbit seller is not there when we get back.
Turns out he was, until the sponsors.
I see him scurrying around back. Now you can see somebody's going over there and putting the animals in a plastic bag.
Smith waves down an LAPD officer on a boat.
How long will be? Hispanic, white shirt.
They know to give chase now could put the throngs of shoppers at risk. The man had already tossed 2 cages into the street. The turtles that are desperately paddling the walls of plastic cages will be turned over to LA's Department of Animal Services. And soon after our departure, it will be business as usual. For NPR News, I'm Gloria Hill.
Animals have a special place in the human heart, and now researchers have found creatures great and small also have a special place in our heads. NPR's John Hamilton has that story.
When a person sees an animal, any animal, the brain responds with astonishing speed. Christoph Koch, a researcher at Caltech, says he was reminded just how fast during a recent run along a mountainous trail in Los Angeles.
As I was about to step down, I saw there was a rattlesnake. By the time I realized it, by the time I felt fear, I said, oh my God, there's a snake, I had already automatically extended my legs, my stride was larger, I didn't step on the snake, but just, a couple of inches beyond it, and then of course I ran past.
Without getting bit, Koch says it's a good example of why our brains pay special attention to animals, and he says scientists are beginning to understand precisely how the brain does this. He and other researchers have been looking at how individual brain cells respond to lots of things, including animals.
To our surprise, in this part of the brain called the amygdala, there are lots of cells that seem to be specialized to detect animals. Spiders and pictures of dogs and things and little rodents.
In other words, our brains have specific circuits for recognizing animals. Koch discovered this while studying the brains of people about to have surgery for severe epilepsy. In order to find the source of their seizures, doctors placed electrodes deep in the brain. Koch says it makes sense that they found a response in the amygdala. It's an almond-shaped part of the brain that appeared quite early in evolution.
The amygdala seems to be specialized in alerting us to things that are emotionally important to us, either positive or because they're scary.
And animals are both. Some want to eat us, others could be our dinner, and some we just want to cuddle.
We found in one patient a cell that I call the Peter Rabbit cell because it responded to three very cute images. One was a rabbit, one was a white mohair, and the third one was a cute little mouse.
The researchers studied several parts of the brain in 41 patients, but it was only in the amygdala that they found cells that responded to animals and not people or objects. The finding confirms earlier work suggesting that the human brain is particularly responsive to animals. Behavioral studies, for instance, have found that people pay more attention to animals and people than to things. Joshua New at Barnard College in New York did this experiment. He and his team showed people a series of pictures in which a single element would change. The viewers were really good at keeping track of people and animals.
Even though you can embed a tiny little person or a tiny little animal anywhere in the scene and they'll notice it changing right away, we actually had other images where entire grain silos in a farm scene were both disappearing and reappearing, and they'd actually report that there was no change in the scene.
New says more recent work suggests people actually pay as much attention to animals as they do to other people. And he says once a person has detected a living creature, the brain keeps monitoring it. Probably because, unlike, say, a bridge or a building, a person or animal can suddenly turn from friendly to hostile. Lynn Isbell from the anthropology department at UC Davis says it makes sense that the human brain evolved to focus more attention on